Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to be working on a Shimano. It's a Tekota. It's the Tekota 500 line counter, and unfortunately this line counter doesn't work. It's stuck. So this was sent in by Joe. Joe had asked me if I could replace the line counter and tune up the reel. That's going to be what I will be doing today. We're going to do this in two stages. The first part I'm going to do is actually replace the line counter. We'll show you how that works in case that's the problem that you're having. I was fortunate enough to be able to order this line counter. The line counter was available. It was available through Platinum Parts or Dave's Reel Repair Service. They're in Tampa, Florida. And if you need some Shimano parts, well, call the parts department, and they can and will be willing to help you if that's what you're searching for. It seems like line counters are popular. They're popular because they enable you to have good data and information about when a fish strikes and where it strikes, and that enables you to kind of get right back into that column of water, or the distance from your boat, or however you're fishing this, and get right back out there on the scene. One of the ways that I used to fish from a boat, if you will, is I always counted the number of pulls when I was drifting baits. And what is a pull? Well, we would pull the line out. It would be about 2 or 3 feet, but you would pull the line off the reel, count the number of pulls, and when you got a strike, well, the next time out, all you would do is, let's say you came up at 18 pulls, or maybe in round numbers 75 feet from the boat, what you would do is you would just go right out to 18 pulls again, and you should be back in the column where that set of fish was. And if that's where they were, then wow, you just you got lucky, you got right back on them. Well, the line counter is kind of designed to do that. It allows you to let line out. Most of the time it'll be live lining or chunk baiting. And when you're doing that and letting that out, it will sit and get you right back on the spot without worrying too much. That's sort of the way that it works. All right. Well, this one's broken. We'll show you why it's broken, because I had to take it apart to realize it was broken. And then we'll show you how to replace it. There's 2 screws that are holding in the line counter. Once you go about getting the piece out of there, I think we have to take this little piece off as well. And then this whole assembly can pull out. Now this one's actually kind of a nice version of how the line counters are assembled, because the ones that I've had on the other ones, they just bring you to here, and that's unfortunate, because the piece always seems to break. It usually is an issue that we have with the way that the stem connects in, and Shimano did a little bit better job here in that they integrated that piece into the equation. Well, here's why it broke. There's a spine on the back here, and you can see that it's become loose and detached from the actual wheel. So when you go to reset it, it's just jammed, and there's no real easy fix to that. It really requires that you get a new assembly, and that's what we've done here. So we're going to take this assembly as soon as we can get it out of the bag. They did a good job of packing it, that's for sure. And while I'm doing this, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please use that notification button. That's going to enable you to see the videos that I'm posting. And, well, you can make a decision as to whether that's a video that you would like to see. You can see here that we're detached from that sprocket. On this reel, we're not. It's a firm set again. You have the spring-loaded gearing, and this is going to anchor itself into this little spot right here as you insert the assembly. And it's a plug and play or plug and replace kind of thing. So bring it in, align it. You're going to have to do a little bit of a visual here. Then we took the 2 screws out. We're holding the base assembly, That's these two. One on each side. And there's a stud that's going to hold these in place. Just have to steady it there. Get it on the stud. Just tighten that screw. Add this screw. And you can do a test right here. You just, well, we're at 999. Let's see if we can just reset. We do. And, well, of course, I'm not turning it very fast here, but you can see I'm also turning it in the wrong direction, but that's okay too. And it's, you can see how it's working, and then it can be reset. Well, that's a relatively easy fix, right? But let's go over, and for those of you that want to hang around, we're going to service the other side of this reel because, well, you only get it in a couple of times, right? And, well, we'll set this one up so that we can keep this one fishing for a long time to come. We'll get it back to Joe, and Joe can, I believe he said he's going for steelhead. I'm not quite sure. I could be wrong, but I think he's using this for steelhead up in the Pacific Northwest. And, well, it'll be ready to go again for him when he's doing that fishing. All right, we're just going to load this up, and we'll go over to the business side of the reel and get that one done. All right, before I do that, I want to oil that bearing here. And we can put just a drop of oil on the screws that are on those plastic or Teflon washers. We want to go ahead and bring this back to set up. Make sure your case seam is nice and clean, and it's crisp and tight, and that all ready to go. 4 screws, one on each side, and we'll go over to the other side and continue with the service. For those of you that just wanted to see how to do that service there on the line counter, thank you for watching. I would encourage you to subscribe, and if you like these types of videos, and well, I would ask you to like the video if this has been what you were looking for in terms of how to make that changeover. Again, you don't need to fear all the types of services that need to be done on your reel. Most of them, well, you can logic them out, and they're generally a relatively easy thing to do with a little bit of knowledge. And that's what I intend to try to do here, is to help you by sharing what I know so that you can learn from that and learn to do it yourself and keep your reel fishing. Okay, look at that. We've got a line guide that's moving nice and easy. And we have a reset once you push that button, doing just what it should do. All right, we're going to move on now. We're going to go over and service the other side of this reel. This reel's been around a long time. It's still being sold today. I think it might be sold in the Tekota 2 now. I'm not quite sure, but it's a nice entry. It's a good reel for those of you that like level wind, deep water fishing reels. I'm not a fan. And those of you that like line counters, not a fan. But, you know, to each of us, our own preferences. My preference, again, back to the good old days, and I still use that technique today, but the way I learned by doing the counts on the pull-out of that line, and that's served me well all these years. All right, we're going to take the handle nut off after we've removed that clamp. This tells me that I have what I call the rocket spring underneath. It's a click mechanism for your bait. Just be careful as you take this off. There is a little spring-mounted, well, rocket, for lack of a better term. So let me show you what I advise some folks to do that might be nervous about that. What I advise you to do is get a plastic bag, and as you're removing this mechanism, remove it inside the plastic bag. Just kind of work it like this. That way, if that rocket clip falls out, it falls into the bag and doesn't bounce off your desk. I'll show you that little thing in a moment. Let's just go ahead and do that. And where are you? Okay, so it's right here. You can see it's on that washer. And just be careful about it as you remove it. You get a better view of how it looks now. That little, well, I call it a rocket clip. for the reason that it looks like a rocket ship coming out of there. And we'll show you how to reset that when we go to put this reel back together again. But that's your full stud. And why not put it into that bag? You won't lose it there. And it's just a safe kind of place to hold it. Now when I take the pieces and parts off of this reel, I will use a parts tray for them. And that just helps me keep organized as I go about servicing the reel. All right, there's a place here to take pictures. We have a couple of tension washers that go on next. There's a sleeve and ball bearing set up inside here. But the next thing we want to do is take the 4 external screws off. Those are holding the gear side plate to the frame. Let's take those off. And then we'll have 2 screws on the internal side that are holding the inner case that also will have to be removed. When I take the side plate screws off, I make sure that they're all the same size. If they're not the same size, I note where in the process the screws belong. Those are all the same size. And now we have these 2, and this will release the case tension. So 4 are mounted to the outer frame, 2 are actually mounted inside the posts that are going to hold your yoke and spring assembly. Again, make sure that they're the same size. These 2 are the same size, but they're a different size than the case screw. So when I go to my parts tray, I will put these in a separate corner of that tray so that I don't mistake them for the others. Once that's off, you're going to pull up and out on the case. You'll see the inside of this. That's where I want to direct your attention first. The inside of this has got the free spool release mechanism on it. It's currently in the engaged position. It is up. It will cycle down to release. You want to leave it in that up position because that will become important when you go to remount. We also have a series of shim washers that go between the tension washers and the cap. This gear sleeve spacer is different. It's not symmetrical. There are 2 studs. Oh, yeah, and 1 more shim washer there. And those 2 studs are going to anchor in the main washer for your drag compression. So just note that when you go to put it back. When I work on a reel like this, it doesn't appear this reel's been serviced since it's new. We have 2 springs on here that I like to remove immediately. Take a picture before you remove them. I've had these reels come in where people have put those springs on the other side of the yoke. That's never going to be a good idea. It won't work, and that's why they've come in and saying, well, it didn't work. Yeah, and I understand why. Looks like we also have a little piece of line here that somehow broke off. All right, we want to remove the gear stack now. Pull up and out on the main gear, and pull up and out on your yoke assembly. And then we have a traditional old style secondary anti-reverse dog. It's located here, and you can't see much about that because, well, there's a lot of dirt and old grease on that click ratchet there. So we'll take it off. We'll show you how that works and how to set that. And while I do that, I want to encourage you to ask questions if you have any questions regarding this reel or, well, any reel. You can leave them in this comment section. I get the comments, they all spool in the same way in the morning, so it doesn't matter if you're asking me a question on the Shimano Tekota or if you're asking me a question on an old vintage Mitchell or maybe a bait feeder or something, whatever. They all come into the same place, so don't worry about where you leave the question. More importantly, ask your question. That way I can help you, or try to help you, with getting you back on track. All right. Well, we could have removed the spool before when we were doing the line counter. We didn't. So what we're going to do here is we just use my oiler to get oil into the spool bearing that's sitting underneath. Going to use a quick shot of penetrating oil here to mop up the old grease. That'll help to loosen it up. And a cotton swab to do the cleanup. Now that grease was thrown off of the main gear, and that's done by centrifugal force. As you're spinning, you will have the centrifugal force will throw it away, and well, so much of the idea behind what we're doing here is to clean, to check the mechanisms. We're checking the throw of the free spool release mechanism now, the jack. I'm just going to oil it. I don't like grease in those positions because grease attracts dirt and contaminants, and well, that slows the operation of the reel down and sometimes can really break it, so be advised. This is your click ratchet. On one side you have a stud that's going to knock that free spool release mechanism back up. That's your auto return, if you will. We have a double-sided or fingered anti-reverse dog. It seats that way so that the beak of the dog is in one of these ratchet sets. You have a square internal that needs to be mounted to your bottom of your shaft here. And when you're ready, you want to take that and get it over this point right here. So you're doing a couple of things on the mount of this. One of them, most importantly generally, is getting it over that stud, making sure it's on the square here. We can hold it and turn it, and then when you go to back turn, the friction on those tongs is going to pull it in. You can see how that's working there, and that's how that anti-reverse works. And we have that reset here. We have that little V-shaped clamp, and we have that screw that's going to hold that over that little stud and hold that anti-reverse dog in place. This may be a little bit of an issue, so I'm going to show you a little tool that one of our viewers, Dick, had sent in to me. It's an adaptation, kind of a fun little thing. It's a set of screwdrivers that utilize a clip to hold the screw while you do your work. It's an issue with me. It's always been an issue with me when I deal with these small screws. And Dick gave me a setup here. We have a Phillips head screwdriver and a little plastic tube that goes over the side of it. What you do is you extend out the plastic tube, then you can lock in the head of the screw. In that tube, you lock in that piece as a screw starter, and it's simply some clear tubing that you can get. You probably find it in a pet store, among other places, as tubing for an aquarium set, for example. But lock it in, have that hold it for you, and you can take your mount that needs to go on here. Line up your corner, and then you should be able to use your screwdriver to bring it in, just like that. Genius. Genius. Dick came up with that idea. He was going to patent it. Said that couldn't quite get down that road. Didn't know the economic viability of it, but he asked me to share that with you. I've shared it in the past. I'll continue to share it. What a great idea. Okay, we want to clean up our pinion gear and our yoke. When we go to clean that up, we want to take some fishing reel grease, reapply. Now I'm using pen grease. It's blue. Yeah, Shimano has white grease. When I use the Shimano grease, to me it doesn't make a difference so long as it's fishing reel grease, and it's important to keep your reels oiled and greased. It's just like any other piece of machinery. If you let that go, you're going to get friction, and friction is going to cause wear, and wear is not going to be beneficial to a reel. We've just taken the yoke, we've put it back onto the axle shaft, and merged it with the spool crossbar. This is the jack. Remember, we want that in the up position here. This hole is going to have to merge with the piece that we showed you before. Next up then is the washer that goes inside. It's a small washer, and the reason for that is that track for that anti-reverse dog needs to clear the washer. So if you've got a replacement set of washers that you're using, make sure that the small one goes underneath. These are Shimano drag washers. They do not need to be lubricated. They are a Carbon Tex blend. We're going to clean the main gear. As you can see, it's time for service. There's no grease on this at all. We saw where the grease landed. That was on the back side of the gear plate. So we're going to just make sure that there's a healthy amount of new grease being applied here so that this reel can keep on fishing. You don't have to get it in every tooth. We put gear grease onto the pinion gear. We put it here, and because the sizes of the gears are different, it will spread it as you go along. Again, if you have these, you do not need to grease these. This is a 6-washer set. All the washers in this set are the same on the fabric side. And actually, I'm surprised, but they gave us 2 flat ones here as well. Oh, okay. So we have a flat one on both sides here with that keyed set in the middle. The one with the 2 flat sides goes in first. We put a second drag washer in. The middle washer is called an eared washer because it looks like ears, but has 2 points on each side, a round circle center. This meshes in with the slots in the main gear, like that. Your third washer goes on. And then that second keyed washer, you're going to notice has a raised section that goes up facing you. Next up then is our gear spacer or sleeve spacer with the 2 studs, and those 2 studs go into that top washer, and you need to be flush here. Make sure that they're seated in the piece. With all of that in, the next thing we want to do then is take the 2 springs. One goes on each side of the yoke. Remember, they go on top, not on the bottom. There are some setups that have them on the bottom. And what I do here is I just move that down ever so slightly. Make sure that's in the up position. Bring the case over. Bring the case in, and then pull down on this lever. When you pull down on the lever, it should pull the case in. When it pulls the case in, we are set for the reinstallation of the screws. One screw in should enable me to take the tension off of this. Wrong screwdriver. So let's do that. Well, we're in wintertime here now, and our ponds and streams are frozen over. I just went out to one of the boats that I service fishing reels for out on Long Island, and they're almost iced in the harbor. It's been a very cold winter here, and we've had a string now of sub 20 degree days, and yeah, salt water freezes. Just ask the Titanic, and well, I'm getting a little concerned there about keeping their boats in that harbor with the ice. But we're supposed to get a break in the weather, and they do a good job of monitoring to make sure that they're not going to have any problems with that. But the reason I bring that up is it's a good time to service your fishing reels. It's time to go before it's the season starts. Make sure you use that time to your benefit, and one of the ways to do that is to service your reels. All right. 3 screws go over, or I'm sorry, 3 washers go over, not screws. There's a sealing washer here. Actually, that should go first. Let's get these shim washers off. That's a little almost fabric seal, and it wants to sit on top of the bearing. It wants to shield your bearing. So, my bad. All right. pay attention, right? All right, it's almost fabric-y. We're going to bring that in first. And we'll bring those shim washers on. And then next up, we're going to do the 2 tension washers. Those are the ones that have the bellies in them. One goes high, one goes low. I put the belly facing up on the first and down on the second. And then it's that fun time. So I'm going to take my glove off now. I'm going to show you how to work with that little pesky rocket spring. First time I had one of these, it just drove me nuts. There's 2 ways that you can do this. One of them is the toothpick method or the pick method. I'll explain it, but I don't do that anymore. That's the one that drove me nuts because I couldn't get the hold quite right. But there is a spring for this rocket that's mounted right in here. You can probably see it here, maybe. And the way to do this with a pick is to insert the pick into the carrier and pull back on the pick. And usually a toothpick is just the right size. I don't have a toothpick here right now. To hold that spring and pull it in, and then as you're retracting it, this will sit back further and enable you to get the star adjuster over it. The other way I actually found out from the Shimano website. Nice of them. They probably had a couple of questions. Come in, how in the world do I set this? Put your little cone in there. Take the hard flat washer, bring that down. This is where it always gets a little tricky. If you want to do this inside of a bag, you can as well. But what you want to do is set it to a point of equilibrium, just the way we had it when we took it off. That washer is now trapping that little rocket inside. Guess what? When you bring your star adjuster down, you're going to push down on that. That's going to release the rocket, and it's going to set it inside here so that this rim right here, you can see that ridge up top there, is where that rocket will land, and that's what will make the little click, click, click noise as you adjust. You need to make sure that you're square. Probably need to take a deep breath because this is always fun with this reel. Bring it in, bring it over. Should be right at that point now. And now you hear it. Click, click, click. And now we know that that's working properly. Next up then is the handle. Handle goes on. Handle cap goes on. Silly me. No harm, no foul, but we have the 2 inner screws for that side plate. Fortunately, we can get them on without reversing all of that work that we just did with the star adjuster. It'd be a shame if I had to go back and take that off again, because that's the nervy part of the whole service. But that's it's also the advantage of having a parts management system when you're working on your fishing reels. Because, well, if I didn't have that in my basket here, I would think I'm done. They might be sitting on my desk somewhere, or worse, on the floor, or lost or something. And, well, we don't want that to happen. This is your tension washer that goes between your star adjuster and the handle. The handle is on next. The cap goes on. And be careful as you put the nut cap on. It needs to go on square. My advice is always to tighten it down as fully as you can with your hand. That way you know that it's sitting properly as you go to adjust. When you're tightening up your handle nut, generally if you have the point of the cap pointing at that screw hole, then your clamp is going to sit properly. Missed. I said, generally, I can grab enough of that nut to turn it to make sure that it's there. And then we're going to put the screw in, tighten that down, and the only thing that's left kind of is a little bit of a test. Make sure that we did it all right. We can put a shot of penetrating oil onto the seam here for the handle. And let's see how we did then. So we're going to put this in free spool, make sure that it free spools. Remember what we said about the stud aligning with the jack. Make sure that it's turning properly. The line counter is counting. The line reset works. This one's ready to go fishing. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. It's been fun to do. Before I leave, I want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, and everybody involved in the course of keeping us out of harm's way. And I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to reset the line counter on a reel and how to tune the reel up. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.